Get out and stay out." My father's voice roared across the dining room, his face twisted with rage and disappointment. The Thanksgiving turkey sat untouched between us as his words echoed off the walls of our family home in San Diego. I sat there, stunned by the venom in his voice, my fork still halfway to my mouth. The cranberry sauce suddenly tasted bitter, and I felt the familiar weight of his expectations crushing down on me like a physical force. "My name is Belle Hampton. I'm 28 years old, and I had just shattered my father's carefully constructed dream for our family legacy. For as long as I could remember, Douglas Hampton had orchestrated every aspect of my life around one singular goal: joining the prestigious Hampton and Associates law firm that bore our family name. My brother, Chase, had fallen in line perfectly, graduating from Harvard Law and sliding seamlessly into his role as junior partner. But I'd always been different, always questioning, always drawn to something bigger than billable hours and corporate litigation. The moment I told my father I had officially withdrawn from law school, I watched 28 years of his investment in me crumble before his eyes. He had spent decades building Hampton and Associates into one of San Diego's most respected family law practices, and in his mind, I had just thrown it all away. My mother, Janine, sat frozen beside him, her wine glass trembling slightly in her manicured hands. She had perfected the art of silent agreement over the years, never challenging my father's vision for our family's future. "You're a disgrace to everything this family has built," Douglas continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow felt more threatening than his shouting. "I've sacrificed everything to give you opportunities, and this is how you repay me." I set down my fork carefully, feeling something cold and determined settling in my chest. The disappointment wasn't new, but the finality in his voice was. Chase shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes fixed on his plate as if the mashed potatoes held the secrets of the universe. Even now, at 34 years old, he couldn't bring himself to defend me against our father's wrath. "After everything I've done for you," Douglas said, standing up so abruptly that his chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "Get out of my house. Get out and stay out." My mother's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room as I slowly stood up, tucking my napkin neatly beside my plate. The ritual of family dinner had become a performance we all participated in. But tonight, the curtain had finally fallen. As I walked toward the door, I could feel their eyes on my back, but nobody called out to stop me. The silence spoke louder than any words could have. Growing up in the Hampton household meant living under the constant pressure of achievement and appearances. My father had built his reputation on family values and legacy, while emotionally distancing himself from his own children. Chase had always been the golden child, the one who asked the right questions and made the right choices. He graduated summa cum laude from Harvard, passed the bar on his first attempt, and seamlessly transitioned into the family business without ever questioning whether it was what he truly wanted. I, on the other hand, had always been the problematic daughter. While Chase studied corporate law, I found myself drawn to environmental science and social entrepreneurship. During my undergraduate years at UC San Diego, I spent summers volunteering with sustainable development organizations instead of interning at prestigious law firms. My father tolerated these phases as long as I maintained my grades and stayed on track for law school. The tension between us reached its breaking point during my second year at Stanford Law. I was sitting in a contracts class listening to a professor drone on about breach remedies when I realized I was slowly dying inside. Every case study felt like another nail in the coffin of my authentic self. That evening, I called my former roommate Maya, who was working with a female-led venture capital group in Los Angeles. "I have an idea," I told her, pacing around my tiny apartment. "Solar-powered infrastructure kits for developing communities, plug-and-play systems that could provide clean energy and internet connectivity to remote areas." Maya listened intently as I outlined my vision. The technology already existed, but nobody had made it accessible and affordable for the communities that needed it most. "You should pitch this to Vidian Capital," she suggested. They're looking for exactly this kind of innovation. That conversation changed everything. Within a week, I had quietly withdrawn from Stanford and moved to a cramped co-working space in Venice Beach. For 9 months, I lived off savings and ramen noodles while perfecting my pitch. 17 rejections later, on a rain-soaked Tuesday in March, my phone rang. Belle Hampton, this is Jessica Chen from Vidian Capital. We'd like to schedule a meeting about your Sun Nest Systems proposal. The meeting took place in their sleek downtown LA office. I presented my solar infrastructure concept to 3 powerful women who had broken barriers in their fields. For 2 hours, I explained how modular energy systems could transform rural communities across Africa and South America, not just providing electricity, but enabling education and empowering local economies. We'll be in touch soon, Jessica said as she walked me to the elevator. This is exactly the kind of innovation we're looking for. 3 weeks later, the call came. Belle, we'd like to offer Sun Nest Systems $30 million in series of funding. I nearly dropped the phone. There was one condition: they wanted me to accept a position on the California Renewable Council, a prestigious advisory board typically reserved for executives with decades of experience. At 28, I would be one of the youngest appointees in its history. The next few months were a whirlwind of legal documents, media interviews, and strategic planning. TechCrunch featured us as a top social impact startup to watch. Forbes included me in their 30 under 30 list. Meanwhile, my family remained oblivious. My father still thought I was having a quarter-life crisis. The week before Thanksgiving, I purchased a $7 million oceanfront mansion in Malibu. It was more than a home, it was a statement of independence. When I arrived at my parents' house for Thanksgiving dinner, the confrontation was inevitable. Belle, my father said abruptly over the untouched turkey, we need to talk about your plans. Spring semester starts soon. Actually, Dad, I interrupted, I withdrew from Stanford 8 months ago. I've started a company. We just closed $30 million in funding. The silence was deafening. That's impossible, he spat. You've been out of school 8 months. Nobody raises that kind of money. Jessica Chen at Vidian Capital would disagree, I said calmly. And as of last month, I was appointed to the California Renewable Council. Kelly, Chase's girlfriend, looked shocked. The Renewable Council? That's incredibly prestigious. My father stood, his chair scraping violently against the floor. You're lying, he hissed. This is some fantasy to justify throwing away your education. The argument escalated until his final words, get out and stay out. I drove straight to my Malibu home that night, ignoring the calls from Chase and texts from my mother. 3 weeks later, my assistant alerted me, Hampton and Associates had applied for a $2 million renewable energy grant. The irony was palpable. As a council member, I reviewed their application, ambitious, well-written, but with one fatal flaw: they had no experience in environmental law. I typed my conflict of interest notice with careful precision. The rejection would be swift and public. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't something you plan, it's simply succeeding on your own terms and letting the consequences unfold naturally.